Good incentives don't guarantee good outcomes. In fact, many of the most broken systems are the result of incentives that worked exactly as designed. They were clear, they were logical, people understood them perfectly, and they followed them. But over time, the behavior those incentives encouraged began to distort the system itself. This happens because incentives don't reward values. They reward measurable signals. And what gets measured gets optimized. What doesn't get measured slowly disappears. Consider a simple example. A company rewards employees for speed. People work faster. Accuracy declines. Quality becomes secondary. No one breaks a rule. No one acts maliciously. They're simply responding to what the system pays attention to. The incentive succeeded, the outcome drifted. Or take a school that rewards test scores. Teaching shifts toward memorization. Critical thinking becomes inefficient. Understanding is replaced by performance. Again, the incentive worked perfectly, but the result no longer matches the stated purpose. This is the core paradox of incentive design. When incentives are narrow, behavior becomes narrow. When rewards target a proxy instead of the actual value, people optimize the proxy, not the value itself. Over time, people adapt to what matters in their system, and once they adapt, they rationalize the behavior as normal. Let's look at how this works in practice. In 2008, Wells Fargo introduced a sales incentive program called Vision and Values. The metric was simple: open new accounts. Employees were expected to open 8 new accounts per day. Hitting this target meant bonuses, promotions, and job security. Missing it meant written warnings, demotions, or termination. The incentive was crystal clear. The pressure was immense. By 2015, employees had created over 2 million fake bank accounts. Accounts that customers never requested. Accounts they often never knew existed. Some customers discovered charges on accounts they'd never opened. The question people ask is, why would employees commit fraud? The answer is simpler than it seems. The incentive didn't ask employees to commit fraud. The incentive asked them to open accounts. And it made that task survival critical. When you face pressure to meet a number, and the number is difficult to hit honestly, you find ways to hit it anyway. One branch manager's email, leaked later, explained it plainly. We have been told that if we do not meet our sales goals, we could be terminated or we could go on a performance improvement plan. This wasn't unique. This was the structure. Across the company, thousands of employees face the same choice: meet the target or face consequences. Some opened accounts for family members without consent. Some opened accounts for customers and deposited small amounts to make them seem real. Some opened accounts knowing they'd be closed, just to hit monthly targets. None of these people woke up thinking, I'll commit fraud today. They were adapting to a system that made fraud the rational choice. Management knew. Internal audits flagged the pattern in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2015. The CEO received briefings, but the program continued because it drove revenue, until it became a scandal in September 2016. The result? $3 billion in fines. Criminal convictions. The CEO forced to testify before Congress, and a decade-long erosion of customer trust in the entire banking system. The incentive worked exactly as designed. It produced rapid account growth, but it also produced behavior no one intended. And this reveals something crucial. The incentive didn't fail. It succeeded. The problem is that the metric, the thing being measured, was wrong. This pattern repeats across industries because the mechanism is universal. Consider the Soviet Union's nail factories. During the Soviet era, factories were measured by output. The state set production quotas and factories were rewarded for meeting them. When nails were measured by quantity, factories produced many small, useless nails. They met the quota in numbers but failed the purpose. The state changed the metric. Now nails would be measured by weight. Factories responded logically. They produced fewer but much heavier, completely useless nails. They met the new quota in weight but still failed the purpose. Both times the incentive worked perfectly. Both times the system produced absurd outcomes. This is what happens when the metric diverges from the actual value. The factory's job wasn't to produce nail numbers or nail weight. It was to produce nails that could be used. But the measurement system didn't reflect that. So behavior adapted to the measurement, not the purpose. Here's a modern parallel that's happening right now. Amazon warehouse workers are measured on what the company calls time on task. This metric tracks how many seconds a worker spends actively picking, packing, or moving items. Non-productive time, bathroom breaks, stretching, getting water, is tracked separately and counted against performance. The incentive is clear. Maximize productive seconds. The result, according to ProPublica's investigation in 2021, is one of the highest injury rates in American warehousing. Workers push through pain. They skip breaks. They rush past safety procedures. They treat their bodies like machines optimized for output. Amazon's safety protocols exist. The company claims to value safety, but the metric, the thing actually measured and rewarded, is speed. So behavior adapted to the metric. Workers prioritize speed because that's what the system measures. The system got what it measured for, rapid output. And what it didn't measure for, worker safety, declined. Again, the incentive worked. The outcome drifted. Why does this happen? Because when incentives misalign with values, people don't see themselves as corrupt. At Wells Fargo, employees weren't thinking, I'm a fraud. They were thinking, I need this job. The target is impossible to hit honestly. I have to do something. This cognitive shift is not dishonesty. It's rationalization. It's adaptation. Over time, the rationalization becomes identity, the behavior becomes normalized, and the person no longer sees the contradiction between what they claim to believe and what they actually do. This is organizational capture of thought. The incentive doesn't force bad behavior. It redefines what good behavior means inside that system. What's considered normal shifts? What's considered acceptable shifts? And slowly, the organization has trained thousands of people to optimize for the proxy, not because they're bad people, because the system made it rational. Here's what makes this dangerous. You cannot fix outcomes by adding ethics training. You cannot fix outcomes by issuing warnings. You cannot fix outcomes by demanding better behavior. Because as long as the reward structure stays the same, the behavior will too. People respond to incentives, not to intentions. Not to value statements on the wall, not to leadership speeches about integrity. They respond to what they're measured on, and what gets rewarded gets repeated. When you examine a system that's producing unwanted outcomes, don't ask what it's supposed to do. Ask what it actually measures and rewards. That's what you'll get more of. If a system rewards speed but claims to value accuracy, you'll get fast mistakes. If it rewards volume but claims to value quality, you'll get cheap, broken products. If it rewards quarterly profit but claims to value long-term stability, you'll get decisions that generate short-term gains and long-term damage. Look at what the organization actually measures, not what it claims to value, not what it promises. What does it literally track, and what happens to people who excel at that metric? That answer, that's the real incentive structure. That's what the system will produce more of. The metrics define the values. The values define the behavior, and the behavior aggregates into outcomes. Once you see this, you start noticing it everywhere. Every system you encounter can be read this way. What does it measure? What does it reward? And what has it stopped measuring? Because measurement drift means behavior drift. And once behavior drifts, the system produces results no one intended but everyone participated in.